All right, looking at factoring day 2. So we're still going to use a lot of the same strategies, but these examples are specifically mainly going to have a coefficient that's going to be greater than 1. So you're still going to kind of need the same idea behind your signs. So I'm going to go ahead and write those down. Remember, if the two signs are positive, your two factors are going to be positive. If the two signs are a plus and a minus, then remember, if it ends in a minus, they're going to be two different signs. The bigger number will be positive, the smaller number negative. If it's a minus plus, again, if it ends in a plus, it's going to be whatever that middle term is, so two negatives. And if it's minus minus, then your two factors are minus plus. Okay? So the little bit difference here, again, step 1, I'm going to write this down. Step 1 is always check for a greatest common factor. Okay? So looking at question number 1, is there anything that divides into 6, 5, and 1? No. No, there's not. Okay? So to figure out your factors from here, okay, I'm going to use a little organizational strategy. It's called like the X method. So I'm going to draw a little X here. Okay? The bottom number is going to be my middle term. The top number is what I get when I multiply the first and the last term together. Okay? From there, I still know that this is a minus plus, so I know my two factors are going to be minus and minus. And I need to decide what multiplies to be 6 and adds to be 5. Well, that's 3 and 2. Okay, I still personally like to write the biggest number first. It actually doesn't really matter, but that's what I like to do. After you determine what these factors are going to be, you're going to squeeze them here in the middle of your trinomial. You're going to replace this negative 5x with a negative 3x and a negative 2x because those are your two factors. So check this out. It's a 6x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 1. Okay, so we have partially factored this. We've partially unfoiled it. Okay, this is like the unsimplified version of what you get when you FOIL it out. From here, we have a method that when you have 4 terms, you can do what's called factoring by grouping. Listen to this. It has to be 4 terms to be able to do this, factoring by grouping. So what we're going to do is we're going to group the first 2 terms together. Just looking at those 2, if you just had that and I said factor this, what would you do? Well, we would check for a greatest common factor, and our greatest common factor between these 2 terms is a 3x. If I take a 3x out of both of those, I'm left with a 2x minus 1, right? 3x divided by 3x is still, you have to have that placeholder 1. Okay? Same thing when I do the back. When I look at this and I say factor it, there isn't a greatest common factor, but notice that the leading term is negative. So I'm going to want to factor out that negative 1. I would be left with 2x minus 1. From here, you have 2 terms in parentheses. These 2 terms should be exactly the same. If they are, this is one of your factors, 2x minus 1. The other factor comes from combining these 2 greatest common factors we pulled out into our other factor. This is now completely factored. If you wanted to check it, remember you could always FOIL it back out, but it does work. Okay, so let's do this again. Looking at question number 2 here. Okay, step 1, is there a greatest common factor? No, there's not. So again, I'm going to draw my X for my organization. You do not have to do the X. As long as you can do the math without doing the X, you don't have to actually write this part down. I don't have to see this. Okay, so remember the middle term goes on bottom. What you get when you multiply the top, the first and the last together goes on top. So that's a 36. Okay, since this is a plus minus, then I know my signs are going to be a positive and a negative. And then I'm looking for factors of 36 that subtract to be 9. So what multiplies to be 36 and subtracts to be 9? How about 12 and 3? So 12 goes here, 3 goes here. I can squeeze those factors in between what I already have. So I'm going to replace that 9x with a plus 12x. and a minus 3x. Okay. Again, remember the order doesn't technically matter. I like to write the biggest one first. Be sure that you are adding x's to these terms to be able to do this. Okay? Again, looking at this, factor by grouping. I have 4 terms. Looking at that, what can I factor out? I can factor out a 2x. If I take 2x out of both of those, I'm left with an x plus 6. I'm going to do the same thing to the back. Looking at this, what can I factor out of that? A 3. And since that leading term is negative, I really need to factor out a negative 3. If I take a negative 3 out, I'm left with, again, an x plus 6. That's good news. That's what I wanted. So notice this term matches this term, so I can pull that out as one of my factors. The other factor comes from combining the 2x and the negative 3 to make our other factor. Let's do a couple more examples. Question number 3. Same thing. Step 1, do I have a greatest common factor? No, I don't. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply together to be 3 times 20 is 60. And subtract to be 7. Again, plus minus tells me the biggest one's going to be positive, the smaller number is going to be negative. And what multiplies to be 60 and subtracts to be 7? So think about all your factors of 60, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20. You can keep going. How about 12 and 5? Okay, from there, again, replace the 7x with a 12x minus 5x. So that's 3x squared plus 12x minus 5x minus 20. Again, now I can factor by grouping. I have these 4 terms. So looking at these first 2, what can I take out of both of those? How about a 3x? If I factor 3x out, I'm left with just an x plus 4. I can do the same thing to the back 2 terms. Greatest common factor there is a negative 5. If I factor a negative 5 out, I'm left with an x plus 4. Again, these 2 match. They should. If they don't, you should recheck your math. Those 2 become my other factor, and I've now completely factored this problem. Okay? Same thing here in question number 4. Question number 4. Step 1, I'm going to multiply these together. 2 times negative 28 is a 56. Okay? I'm going to skip the x method this time, and I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to our grouping. Okay, so again, 2x goes in front, 2x squared, then minus 28 it back. To figure out my factors that go in the middle, I'm looking for numbers that multiply to be 56 and subtract to be 1. I also know my signs need to be a plus and a minus. Okay, so something x and something x. What multiplies to be 56 and subtracts to be 1? How about 8 and 7? Again, I like to put the biggest number first. Now I can factor by grouping. Okay, so that's an example of how maybe you can do this without having to actually draw the x every time. I'm going to leave that up to you. But the factoring part needs to stay the same. Still looking for a greatest common factor. How about 2x? That leaves me with an x plus 4. Looking at the back, greatest common factor, negative 7. Left with, again, an x plus 4. Again, these 2 terms should match. These create your other part. Okay. Notice this time I wrote that part at the beginning. Remember, the order of your factors it doesn't actually matter which one you put first. Okay? Question number 5. So I'm going to do a couple more examples here. If you feel like you got it, but maybe you should go ahead then and work this out on your own and then check your answer with mine. Feel free to fast forward in the video and check your answer. So again, step 1, I'm going to do 3 times 12. That's a 36. Okay? So I'm looking for factors of 36 that multiply to be 36 and subtract to be 5. So again, I can go ahead and put my information in there. I know plus minus is again going to be a plus and a minus. Multiplies to be 36, subtracts to be 5. How about 9 and 4? Again, factor by grouping. Group those first two together. I could take a 3x out. That leaves me with an x plus 3. Group the second two together. I could take a negative 4 out. That leaves me with an x plus 3. That's good news because we want those to match. My two factors, x plus 3 and 3x minus 4. All right, question number 6. What do you need to do first here? Okay, remember our leading term needs to be positive. So step 1, before I do any of this other stuff, is I need to factor a negative 1 out of this entire equation. Okay, now I can factor this inside part. 6 times 2 is 12. What multiplies to be 12 and subtracts to be 1? 4 and 3. So that's going to be 6x squared plus 4x minus 3x, because plus minus is plus minus, and then minus our 2. Again, check out these groups. Greatest common factor of 2x, that leaves me with a 3x plus 2. Greatest common factor of a negative 1, that leaves me with a 3x plus 2. Again, here are your terms. And here's the other one. But don't forget this greatest common factor of negative 1 you pulled out at the beginning needs to stay in front of your equation. Okay? Great. A couple more examples. I know there are several examples on this page, but factoring is so important to what we do in this class that I'm going to go ahead and work out all 12 of them, even though I don't really want to. Okay? Question number 7. Okay? You could go ahead and try to do this. 9 times 9 is 81. What multiplies to be 81 and adds to be 30? There is something like, 27 and 3. So, but the thing is, there's actually an easier way if you pay attention and take out your greatest common factor first. This has a greatest common factor of 3. When I pull the 3 out of the equation, our numbers get just a little bit smaller and it's a little bit easier to work with. If you did not pull that greatest common factor out, then you would be close, but you wouldn't actually have all your factors completely factored, if that makes sense at all. From here, though, I can go ahead and finish this. 3 times 3 is 9. What multiplies to be 9 and adds to be 10 is 9 and 1. So plus plus is a plus plus 9x plus x plus 3. Now I can look to factor. Greatest common factor there is a 3x. That leaves me with a x plus 3. Greatest common factor here is an understood 1. I can't actually pull anything other than a 1 out of both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out as like a placeholder. My two factors are going to be x plus 3 and 3x plus 1. Don't forget this greatest common factor of 3 that you found at the very beginning needs to hang out in the front. Okay? Same thing on question number 8. Don't forget to take your greatest common factor out. I would like you to go ahead and pause this video and see if you can work these last 5 questions on your own, because they're all kind of review type questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and write down your answers here. If you factored this one correctly, you should have gotten 5 times x minus 5 times x minus 4. Don't forget to put that greatest common factor of 5 out in front. Okay. Question number 9 was kind of a tricky one. There's nothing that multiplies to be 14 and subtracts to be 3, so this one's non-factorable. Question number 10, you should have taken the greatest common factor of 5 out first. Then you were left with a difference of 2 squares. Once you factored that out, you should have gotten this solution. Last 2 examples. Question number 11, all you could do is factor the greatest common factor out. Don't forget to leave that placeholder 1 for that 6 when you factor out the 6x. Last equation is just like the ones we learned today. You should have taken your common factor of 2 out first. You would have been left with 3x plus 1 times 3x minus 5.